Welcome to the Connect with BMC Helix webinar series. During today's event, you'll be able to ask questions of our panelists. The questions and answers will be posted along with this broadcast to our YouTube channel. Today's topic is BHCO, migrating to 21.3 SaaS Helix platform. Mahesh will take us through this content, and I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, Greg. As Greg said, my name is Mahesh Mulye. I'm lead product developer with Platinum Engineering. So topic for today is BHCO migrating to 21.3 SaaS Helix platform. So as part of the agenda today, we have overview. Then we will be going through the migration workflow. We will also be discussing validations that are part of the migration workflow. After that, we will go through the typical migration plan and what are the options that we have for the customer. And then finally, we will touch base upon the troubleshooting and reference section. So use case for today is ability to migrate data for customers using on-prem TSCO 2002 to BHCO 21.3 Helix SaaS platform. Now the further slides are explaining how this can be achieved using migration toolkit that's available as part of the BHCO 21.3 downloads page. So as you can see in this slide, what happens is when you have your BHCO 21.3 AD environment up and running, as part of that, there'll be a downloads page from where you can download your migration toolkit. So as you can see in this diagram, one of the prerequisites for the migration is your BHCO should be up and running along with your remote ETL engine configured, which runs in the customer's environment, obviously. And then what happens is, so you download the migration toolkit from download page from BHCO 21.3 onto the TSCO 20.02 application server. So as you can see in the diagram, the other prerequisite is your TSCO version should be 20.02. So if the TSCO version is before 20.02, it is a prerequisite that the TSCO should be first migrated to 20.02 version. So once we download the migration toolkit, after that the steps are pretty straightforward. We need to create an API user in the Helix portal in the BHCO, and then get the tenant ID, access key, and secret key, and then populate a configuration file called application.properties file. After that, we have to run a script in order to run the migration toolkit. As a result of that, metadata file is created. What metadata file contains is all the configurations, which are simply the information about populating entities, all the relationships, all the tags, all the analysis model. So all that information is captured in the metadata. So once metadata file is created, it gets automatically transferred to the BHCO console or BHCO portal, we can say. After the migration toolkit run is finished, the next steps that really remain on the BHCO console side are the validation steps. Now, what are the validations that one needs to do on the BHCO side? After the metadata file is transferred to the BHCO side, the first thing that needs to be done is customer needs to verify that the migrator system task is running. Okay. After the task is finished, what that task does is it populates all the entities, relationships, tags, analysis, and models. So that verification or that validation needs to happen. Parallelly, what happens is also the data migrator ETL tasks are scheduled on the remote ETL engine for the BHCO. What this data migrator tasks do is they get all the historical data up to 2 years in the past from the customer's TSCO database into the BHCO. After that step is done, the only remaining step remains is validation on the validation for the configuration performance data in the BHCO console. So if you look at the overall workflow, the execution is mainly on the on-prem TSCO application server. What needs to be done on the BHCO side is mainly the validations part. Okay. So as I just explained, all the points have been just noted down over here. Just to repeat, the main thing is after you download the migration toolkit, one needs to create the API user in the Helix portal and get all the credentials and then populate the application.properties file and simply run the migration toolkit. Rest of the workflow is totally automatic. Again, validations on the BHCO side, as I explained before, one has to simply validate that the system migrator task is running. After that is finished, verify entities, relationships, all the artifacts. Next step is verify the data migrator ETL tasks are up and running. After those are finished, we need to verify the performance data, historical performance data. So at a time, 7 days at a time, each ETL task runs to get data for the past 7 days. So depending on the number of entities, but different ETL tasks are scheduled. So the entities are divided among different ETL tasks. So each run gets data for last 7 days. Okay. So after the ETL run finishes to get last 7 days of data, automatically the next run begins, which fetches data for the previous 7 days, and so on. So in total, we bring data up to 2 years in past. Now, this property, like up to which day to go in the past, like whether you want to go 2 years in the past or whether we want to go 1 year in the past, this is something that is configurable. So this is explaining basically the diagram or the location from where you can download the migration toolkit. As you can see, we have to go to system and downloads, and you can see the migration toolkit option has been encircled in this diagram. The next diagram is showing how you can create an API user for running the migration toolkit. So one needs to go to the Helix portal, and as part of the Helix portal, you can see there is an API user section. So one has to simply click on the add API user, and then once you click on add API user, you will be presented with API key, access API key in the sense access key, secret key, and then the tenant ID. So this together forms your key, credentials. Those need to be specified in your application.properties file, which is available as part of the migration toolkit. So these three properties, tenant ID, access key, secret key, would be copied from here along with the base URL, again encircled over here, needs to be copied, and then all these four properties would be populated in the application.properties file. After one runs the migration toolkit, and after the run is over, the metadata file would be transferred to the BHCO console, and then what customer would observe is the migrator system task would be up and running. So this is just a validation to see if the task is running or not. So once the task starts running, it will continue for some time depending on the number of entities that one has. After the task is finished, the next step is one has to verify the external DB connection. Now, this particular slide is specifically meaningful only if you have TSCO, on-prem TSCO with the Oracle database. Okay. So what happens is if you are running TSCO with Oracle database, in that case, the data migrator task, what happens is those tasks are scheduled on the remote ETL engine. Now, remote ETL engine needs to connect or communicate with the TSCO database. Okay. So for that, the remote ETL engine needs to have the Oracle client installed, and then the specific Oracle client, Oracle home path, we need to validate if the path specified in this configuration is correct or not. So that is the validation part that needs to happen. As shown in this slide, as I said, it is applicable only if TSCO is a Oracle database. The next thing is after your system task is finished, the next checkpoint is we have to verify if the data migrator ETL tasks are up and running. Okay. So as explained previously, each run will bring 7 days of historical performance data, and then previous 7 days and so on up to 2 years in the past. So now I will move to the typical migration plan that actually that needs to happen. So the main part of the migration plan is the assessment part of it. So what happens in the assessment part is we have to identify different customizations that have been done in the environment, and then check for the feasibility in terms of what will be automatically migrated, what needs some sort of redesign, and what could be imported or exported. So it's an analysis to make sure that before we migrate to BHCO, all the use cases or all the things that customer is using, those are well taken care of when the migration happens to BHCO. So the other things are pretty much I explained previously. One needs to have BHCO up and running with RE configured, and then one has to download it, and then the validation part is on the BHCO side. So now we are moving to the important slide, which covers all the migration options that customer has. So this slide is primarily talking about what are the options that we have while we move customer from TSCO to BHCO. So as you can see in the first bucket, we are listing the all the things that are automatically taken care by the migration toolkit. What this involves is once you run the migration toolkit and once the process is complete, you will have all the catalog entities, relationships, all the configuration data, historical data, all the entity filters, time filters, all your custom metrics, tags, analysis, models, custom benchmarks, basic reports, ETL tasks, and then basic report templates. All of those are automatically migrated. Okay, so there is nothing that needs to be done on this aspect. Only thing that needs to be done is just verify or validate whether you have got everything that was there in the on-prem environment. So the next part is about the manual. Okay, so this means there is some manual steps that are needed in order to make sure that the use cases that customer was running on the on-prem TSCO are also available, or to ensure that those also work fine on the BHCO side. So as part of that, there's a manual export and import that can be done for the data marts, which are of summary data mart type. Okay. So if you remember, we had introduced summary data mart that takes care of automatically creating the data marts without ever having to write a SQL query. So if you are using summary data marts, what one needs to do is simply export those data marts and re-import those. If we do that, we are taken care of in terms of use cases that involve the summary data marts. As part of redesign, there are things that needs to be taken care of. Again, here the main thing that we need to understand is not everyone will be using all of these things that have been listed over here. Like not everyone uses the buffer tables, which are simply the custom structure tables that is populated to the custom structure extractor. So if you are not using some of these things, we can just ignore those. Okay. For example, not many customers are using threshold management at a system level. Typically, we do threshold management at a system type level, which is pretty much supported. So we have to really evaluate what is being used out of whatever has been mentioned as part of the redesign part. And also we are evolving our data migration toolkit. So as part of that, more and more things are being taken care of so that they are automatically migrated. For example, we are currently working on the producer-based custom statistics support, and then so that will be so there's a plan to automatically migrate that. Along with also there is a plan to to check. So let's say that customer has number of custom data marts involving SQL queries, right? And then there may be data marts which refer to another data marts and so on. So an effort is being made to check for the feasibility if we can do some sort of automatic migration for a certain percentage of data marts automatically, so that the redesign effort is reduced significantly. So that effort is currently being evaluated. So as I said, going forward, we can expect to have migration toolkit evolving over time. Okay. And then finally moving to the no migration bucket. So some of the features that were not being used, or as we expect or as we envision them to be used in the future, considering that aspect, we have discontinued those primarily because there are alternate workflows available and that could be leveraged. Just to give you an example, for example, for cloud cost control, we already have a cloud cost available. So definitely something that can be used if someone is doing cloud cost control. The other features are planned for the future releases, as you can see over here. Those are investigate reservations and system and service templates. So the primary takeaway from this slide is the assessment part of it. If customer is not using some of the features that require redesign or there is no migration, obviously those can pretty much be ignored. And then the remaining things, we have to see how we can leverage some of the existing things to make sure that those use cases are fulfilled. So just to give an example, a summary data mart wizard provides you a good way to extract data from HCO. It's possible that some of the SQL queries or the data marts that were using SQL code may not be necessary going forward. We could simply get that data from just creating a summary data mart. From the summary data mart wizard, and in turn, the created summary data mart can be used directly in the BHCO dashboard. Okay, or if we are doing some sort of filtering, we can write a simple SQL data mart on top of summary data mart wizard with a filtering condition, and then the resultant SQL data mart that uses underlying summary data mart can definitely be used in the BHCO dashboard. So those are some of the alternatives that are available in BHCO. So they can definitely be leveraged. So all of this is pretty much part of the assessment that needs to happen before we plan the migration to BHCO from on-prem TSCO. So that's all about this slide. So we can move to the next slide. So in this, so as you can see, we'll spend some time on the demo part. So whatever I talked about, I will demonstrate to you how the migration toolkit is run, and also I will spend some time on the validations aspect on the BHCO side. Where the things are to be validated, how API user creation needs to happen. So now let's start with the demo. As you can see over here, I have logged into the Helix portal, and from the Helix portal, I have launched a continuous optimization console over here. As I was saying previously, while I was going through the slides, before we start the migration process, the prerequisite is that the BHCO 21.3 should be up and running. Also, a remote ETL engine should be configured as part of the environment, BHCO 21.3 environment. Okay. So having this ready, the first step before we start the migration process is we need to download the migration toolkit. So I go to, so as you can see in the console, all the downloads are available as part of the system and downloads. So I go to system downloads, and then at the end of the page, you can see an option called migration toolkit. Okay, so I can download the toolkit from this specific location. So this toolkit needs to be downloaded on the application server, TSCO application server. So what I have done over here is I have downloaded the toolkit on this TSCO application server. So as you can see over here, this is the folder wherein I have downloaded the toolkit. So now I go to this specific folder. So the main folders as part of this download are configuration is there, bin is there, log is there, and then actual file which is run.sh. That content with that you run the script. Okay, and the actual zip file is created as part of the output folder. Now let's go to the configuration directory wherein we configured the application.properties file. Okay, now this application.properties file contains the credentials that are needed to the connect to the Helix portal. Okay, so if I just open the application.properties file, I can see there is a Helix host, tenant, access key, secret key, and then dry run equal to true. Okay, we will come to this dry run option. Let's first go through this 4 properties. So I go to the Helix portal. In the Helix portal, the credentials in order to specify the credentials in the application or properties file, I need to create a API user. So I go to users. I go to API users, and then I say add API user. Now let me give some name to the API user. Test API user. Okay. And then I can probably say I can give some description over here, and I can select some expiry over here. Okay, let's say 30 days. And then what happens is I just need to say confirm. Okay, so once I say confirm over here, what I get is I can see different details over here. So what I need to copy is the tenant ID, copy from here, access key, copy from here, and then secret key again, copy from here. And then these 3 values are specified in the application.properties file, tenant, access key, and secret key. Also, I copy the URL from here. This entire URL, base URL needs to be copied from here and then specified as part of the Helix source parameter. Okay, so having specified all the 4 parameters, the next parameter is really optional, but recommended that we run the toolkit with this option first. What this option does is with this so when we run the toolkit with dry run equal to true, the configuration or metadata is created on the application server, but it is not transferred to the Helix portal. So we strongly recommend that we run the first toolkit with dry run equal to true. We ensure that there are no errors. Then we remove this parameter and then rerun the toolkit. OK. So this was the workflow from the perspective of specifying the application.properties file. So once we are done with the application.properties, all the parameter specification, the next thing is we come here and then we run the toolkit actually. So the command is we say run.sh -b, and then we specify the BCO home path. OK. So since I had already run it before, I won't rerun it right now. Also, it takes few minutes depending on the size of your environment, because as part of the run, the metadata file is created and also it is transferred to the Helix portal. So let's not run it for now. So after I'm done with the running of the script, and then let's say that the run has finished. So what happens after the run has finished? We need to go back to the Helix portal now. OK, or we need to go back to the Helix, the HCO console. We need to go to the HCO console. OK, so after my migration toolkit run is finished, what I would see over here is if I go to system tasks. I will have a system task called migrator task. Okay. So what that migrator task does is it processes the metadata file that was transferred from the TSCO environment, and it populates all the configurations, all the entities, hierarchies, tags, configurations, models. So all of that is populated in the console. So after this task is finished, you will see the status has ended. If you go to the workspace, you will see your entire hierarchy. You should also be able to see all the tags. You should also be able to see all the analysis models and everything. Okay. So make sure that this verification is done after the migrator system task is finished. The next thing that needs to be verified is, so this is specifically for the TSCO with Oracle database. You will see the external DB connection has been specified with the Oracle home specification over here. What this DB connection is doing is this is used to connect from the remote ETL engine to the TSCO database. Okay, so make sure that your remote ETL engine Oracle client is installed on the path given in this Oracle home. If the path is different, we need to edit it and make sure the path is correct. Okay, so after this validation is done, the next thing is if we go to ETL tasks, you should see that there are different ETL tasks that have been already been configured. So depending on your environment, all the entities are divided among different tasks. So each ETL task brings a group of entities and the performance data 7 days at a time. Okay. So after all of this tasks are finished, at least one run, you should have 7 days of historical data for the entities in your BHCO console. Okay. So if I go to any of the tasks, let's say go to hash 0 task, you will see, and if I edit the run configuration, you can see that there is a parameter that can be used to specify the historical time up to which the data should be fetched. So in this case, I have specified 200 over here. You can specify maximum 2 years worth of days you can specify to bring the historical data into the HCO console. Okay. So as I said, after I'm done with run of all the tasks, we should see data in the workspace for all the entities that had data in the TSCO console. So if you go to any of the metrics over here, you should see so as per what was available in the TSCO console, you should be able to see the data in the BHCO console as well. So this is just a normal verification process, just as we normally verify any performance data. We just need to ensure that the performance data has been brought into the BHCO console. Now, in terms of, let's say that we also want to take a look at, how many times the task has run. As I said, each run brings 7 days of data, and then it goes back in the past to bring another 7 days of data, and so on till the last 2 years maximum period, which is configurable. If we want to check how far the data has been brought in CO, we could just go to last counter and check this date. So this date will tell us how much in the past the data has been brought in at CO. So with last counter, we can do that. So this is the overall workflow in terms of how the toolkit is run, how the system tasks are run, and how they should be validated. Okay, let's say that you run the toolkit with the dry run option, and then or without dry run option. And if we run into some issues, then there is a folder called log, and then that log folder is the one that contains the log file. So we could definitely go to this log file and check if there are any issues in the process. And then the output folder is the one that contains the zip file, which is the file that will hold the metadata contents which are transferred ultimately to the HCO console. So we could just. So you could see it here. So if I go to one of the folders, I can see that the migration zip file is created over here, which is transferred to the HCO console. So this is just for the checking purpose. Okay, what is the size and those things. The log, as I said, as specifically you can check the log in case there are errors. So overall, if we if we run the toolkit with dry run option, we should see if there are any corner cases, if they are generating any errors. So we could take care of those in the initial phase itself, so that when we run without dry run option, we won't run into any surprises. So this was overall the way the toolkit is run, and then what are the validation steps, and then where the logs needs to be checked. All those points I covered in this demo. So with that, I would say my demo is done. Now let's begin with the troubleshooting section. Okay. So now we just saw how the entire workflow looks like in the demo, how the validations happen, what are the things that need to be looked at or validated in the BHCO. So having seen all these things, I'll highlight some of the common issues that we may face when we run the migration toolkit. If you have already taken care of some of the things that I sort of emphasized in this presentation, you may not encounter these issues. Okay. But let's say for some reason we encounter some of these issues, then this slides are giving you guidelines in terms of what are the things that you need to look at to get started and to resolve the problem immediately. So let's say that your system migrator system task is over, and then the data migrator ETL task starts. So as I said before, data migrator ETL task runs on the remote ETL engine that connects to your TSCO database. Okay, now let's say that TSCO has an Oracle database. This is specifically for the Oracle database. So what happens is from your remote ETL engine for BHCO, so remote ETL engine, as we know, runs on the customer environment. So it will connect to the TSCO Oracle database, which also will be on-prem. Okay. So in that case, if your remote ETL engine is not having Oracle client, or if it's not configured to use the Oracle client, in that case, you may face an error saying that process cannot be started and class not found exception, which means it is not able to locate the Oracle driver. Okay, so in that case, what needs to happen is make sure that Oracle client is installed, it is configured as part of the script custom envp.sh, and also after your system migrator task is finished, as I showed before, we have to verify in the external DB connections if the Oracle home path is where actually the Oracle client has been installed on the remote ETL engine. So this validation, if it has happened before, you should not really get this error. Okay, but in case something is missed, this is the place for which we need to check. All right. So having covered this issue, I can move on to the next slide. So in this slide, what we are saying is we are not seeing all performance data for a system. Okay, so the workflow is as again. So maybe I will repeat one more time. We get data only for 7 days at a time, historical performance data. So what we need to do. So this is not an error in principle. This is just making sure that whatever data migrator ETL task has finished, make sure that the same data is available in the console. Okay. So now if we see that the performance data, let's say, is only for last 2 weeks or something, we just need to go to the data migrator ETL task, check the last counter and check the last counter date, and see that the data should be available from that point onwards. Okay, so as more and more runs happen for the data migrator ETL task, you will see that you will have more and more data available, and then the last counter date obviously will go in the past. Okay, so this is just a check to make sure that what you see in the last counter is what is being reflected in the HCA console. So it's all about having the right expectations. So the next slide is about, so let's say we run the migration script, and then it fails. So one of the things that we would strongly recommend is Migration toolkit has an option called dry run. Okay. So what that dry run option does is it simply, the migration toolkit is run. Also, the metadata file, which contains all the configurations, is also generated, but it's not transferred to the BHCO side. So as a result of that, the remaining things that happen on the BHCO side will not happen. So we recommend strongly that first we run the migration toolkit with dry run option. This will ensure that we validate the environment in terms of there are no errors or there are no surprises when we do the actual transfer of the metadata file. So this is like a some sort of making sure that we don't run into issues later. So this is something that is strongly recommended. So those are the common issues that I would strongly recommend for the troubleshooting purpose. Having said that, now let me spend a minute on what are the past webinars that happened on different topics. So as you can see, these are the different webinars that happened in the past. So feel free to go through those webinars that are of interest to you, pertaining to the suite of products that you're using. So this will give you good insights in terms of overall AD platform, along with the different things that come with it. So you can definitely go through some of the webinars, right? The next slide is covering about the references section. So this is listing different, what is the documentation available for the workflows that I just discussed. So feel free to go through those links. That will give you a very detailed, steps that need to be executed for the migration toolkit, as well as how the API user needs to be created. So feel free to go through those documentations. So that's about the references section. So with that, I'll go over to the summary section. So what we covered in today's presentation is we looked at the migration workflow, how the workflow has started on the on-prem side, what are the prerequisites for that. After that, what are the validations that need to happen on the BHCO environment? We also looked at a typical migration plan in terms of the assessment that needs to happen. We also discussed what are the options for the migration in terms of assessment, what needs to be what is automatically migrated, what needs to be manually exported and imported, and what needs to be redesigned. That gave good insight in terms of how the customer could be migrated to BHCO 21.3. And then finally, we also had a look at the demo, which covered the workflow. And then we also looked at troubleshooting different common use cases. Okay, so that's the overall thing we covered in today's presentation. So with that, I will hand it over to Greg. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'll take us through the self-help in contacting BMC. The YouTube channel where this webinar will be posted is available at this link. It contains past webinars as well as a rich set of how-to videos. The Connect with TrueSight webinar schedule that contains future webinars as well as our past webinars is available at this communities link. And to contact technical support via web, phone, email, as well as these social channels are available through these links. That will conclude our session today. Thank you for attending.